Welcome back to the Money Bros YouTube channel. I am Nathan and I want to talk about something that has been on my mind a lot. I'm 27 years old and I have to say sometimes I just feel like I am leaps and bounds behind everybody else financially, which is sort of crazy to say because I have had a very interesting financial story and journey over the last 10 years of my life as I've come into adulthood. And I wanted to dig into this and figure out why is that, and is it really the case? Am I really that far behind? Do other people feel that way? And if so, why? So let's dive in and talk about it. First of all, yes, something that I found out pretty much across the board is that everybody feels like this. And I think the most obvious thing that came to my mind initially without doing much research was just social media. It's so easy to portray the best parts of our lives on social media and make it feel like that's all of that's what's happening, right? That there's nothing bad happening, that there's nothing going wrong, but there are a lot of people out there who want to post the best parts because it's fun to see. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, but it really does give the impression, just subconsciously to everyone seeing that over and over and over again on social media, that for some reason my life isn't as interesting or exciting or successful or financially fruitful as the people that we're watching on social media. I think a big piece of this that we need to realize is that there's a lot more to the picture than we're seeing on social media. Like the example of buying the house. Did that person pay for the house all by themselves, or did they get a gift of a down payment from their parents or grandparents? Or, you know, someone who bought a new car, same thing. Did they get help? If they went on a vacation, did they pay for the vacation by themselves, or did they go with family? I was just talking to a friend who said, oh, we went to Disneyland, had a great time. And I was like, wow, that's fun, great for you. And then he was like, the in-laws paid for it. And I was like, oh, okay. Gotcha. Like, it all makes a little bit more sense. And there's nothing wrong with that, but on social media, it just comes across totally different. I think semi-connected to that is just hidden financial troubles or struggles at very least. You know, when we look at people who are posting things that they have on Facebook. We're not rich! We're broke! We always assume certain things, right? We make assumptions based on what we know or what we don't know. So imagine someone driving a car down the street, they got this brand new sports car, right? And it's like, oh, okay, nice car. But in our minds we go, wow, they must be doing pretty well. You know, maybe their job, they got a bonus, whatever, end of the year. What we may not realize is that that person is driving that car because they work sales, and in sales they want to be impressive. And they really are just leasing that car. They don't even own it, and they won't ever own it most likely. And they're making really, really high payments that they can barely afford. And then to kind of, you know, look on the other end of that spectrum, we look at someone driving an old beat up car and it's like, oh, things must be tough, right? But then we realize, or maybe we don't realize, that that person has a paid off car that, yeah, sure, has 150,000, 200,000 miles on it, but it's running reliably and it works well. And they don't have a car payment and they're saving up for a brand new car that they'll buy in cash. Those two scenarios, well, they're very different. They sort of give different feelings and different understandings based on what we can see visually, right? Without knowing the full details. I think the moral of the story here is it's important to remember we just don't know what's going on in other people's lives. It's easy to make assumptions. It's easy to say, oh, well, look at you, congratulations. But at the end of the day, it's typically a lot more complicated than that. You know, someone who goes on a vacation, they might have just barely swung it, or maybe they've been saving up for years and years and just finally got the money to do it. We just don't know, and we should really not assume, because at the end of the day, it's not going to change our lives, and we're not going to be more happy if we know versus if we don't know. The third piece to this that I think is really key is debt. Debt can be a significant hindrance to people in their financial journey. And especially for people like in their 20s and maybe early 30s, it's really hard to know where people are at in their debt journeys. And even later than that, but typically in the 20s and 30s is where you get a lot of like student debt, or maybe you go into debt for your first car. You know, maybe you are buying your first house. There's a lot of these big milestones that happen in that time frame typically, where we just don't really know. Imagine you have the car example. It's like a paid off car versus a $500 a month car payment. That's the difference of $6,000 every single year. If you're paying $500 a month, that's $6,000 every year. Whereas someone who doesn't have a car payment, they could be potentially saving that $6,000 every single year. Another one could be the places you live, right? Imagine someone makes $60,000, two different people making $60,000 a year, but one lives in an apartment, they're paying $1,200 a month for rent, and then the other person lives in a house and they're paying $2,000 a month on their mortgage. So you can imagine, it's like, oh yeah, cool, this one person has a house, but at the end of the day, they're maybe over leveraged, whereas the person in the apartment is able to stock away money every month. One does have a house, and it's cool because they're building equity, but at the same time, they could be struggling every single month, even though it's cool to have that house. Again, it just really comes down to understanding the nitty-gritty details. So again, that's another really important thing, but I think when we have conversations around money, you start to understand where people are coming from. So that's one thing I wish. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. If you let me know how you feel about money and talking about it. Or, do you come from a household where it's kind of hush-hush to talk about it? Or are you someone who has a very open feelings about their finances? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. The first thing here that I think makes a really big difference are just financial starting points. Thinking about, debt, different lifestyle choices. People come from, different starting points. I think about, someone who their parents are paying for their rent right after they got married or when they're going to college, paying for their tuition, versus someone who's working really hard to work their way through college versus someone who takes out student loan debt, right? We have three different scenarios there. And as soon as those people graduate and start their job, maybe earning $50,000 or $60,000 a year, you have one that doesn't have any debt. You have another one who doesn't have any debt, but they also don't have any savings because they've been spending it all on their college education. And then you have someone who does have a lot of debt. And so all those people now are on ground that's not quite level, right? Someone is completely financially free. The other one is financially free, but still in a little bit of a scary position. And the other one has a lot of this debt to make up, right? They have a lot of ground to make up for. So having these different starting points it's important to remember. So when you feel like you're behind somewhere else, think about your financial starting point. How are you? Where did you come from and where are you now? I think it's an important conversation to have. It's a very important piece to this puzzle at very least. And number 5, I think the last one here, it's a little bit of a combination, but it's like the illusion that happens through lifestyle. There's also generational, right, wealth things going on. Think about people who bought houses 20, 30, 40 years ago. Things were different then, right? The earning potential were different compared to the prices of housing, whereas now the prices of housing is far outgrowing people's earning potential. So people who bought a house 10, even 5 years ago from right now, they have a very different, they're in a very different place. I was just talking to my wife about some of our friends who bought houses right before, 2020, 2019, where they were able to buy a house and then essentially sell it in 2021, 2022 for double what they bought it for. So right off the bat, they were making tons and tons of equity on this house. And they were able to sell it and get tons and tons of equity to just stock up in the bank for the next house. Whereas we bought a house just a couple of years later and we didn't have that opportunity. We were just a little bit late and it totally changed the landscape for us. And so even though we were not that far off on what they did, it made a big difference just because of timing. And so there's a lot of these different factors. And then I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like the illusion, right? Having a house, the illusion is, oh, wow, you have a house. But then there's also the reality of, oh, your mortgage is $2,500 a month, but my rent's only $1,200, right? There's just different places. People are coming from different places. They're in different situations. And so it's really easy to overlook all of these different factors when it comes down to it, because we just want to do what everyone else is doing, right? We want to fit in. We want to feel like we're up with everybody else. But really the only way to know if you're doing a good job is to look at where you've come from. What are your goals? What are your interests? What are your desires? If it's that you want to go on more vacations, then what are you doing? What are you doing to make that happen? Are you saving every year so that you can go on one more vacation every year, or just one vacation? If you're wanting to buy a house, are you further along now than you were 2 or 3 years ago? Rather than comparing yourselves outwardly, always strive to compare yourself to your past self and see if you're making progress. I think that that's the best way to find happiness and health in the rest of your life. I hope this video has been helpful. Let me know if you have any other thoughts on why people always feel behind. It's something that I want to work on. I don't want to feel like that, but I know a lot of people do. So if you've ever felt like that, if you have any ideas for improving that, let me know. I hope this video has been helpful. Like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. I'd like to say thank you to our Patreon subscribers for being there for us and our channel, helping us grow. We are a small channel, but we are looking to do some big, great things. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. This is Nathan with Money Bros, signing off.